Hola Sky, buenos días.
Hola, buenos días.
¿Cómo estás?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Sí, todo bien. ¿Qué tal el fin de semana?
¿Qué significa qué tal?
So we've actually learned ¿qué tal in the past as a greeting, like saying how's it going or what's up. But it's a little bit more open than that. So like in this expression, in this use of it, saying ¿qué tal el fin de semana? Fin de semana being the weekend. So it's like saying how was the weekend?
Bien.
Sí. Bien. Hola Lea, buenos días.
Buenos días.
Ok. Entonces, vamos a comenzar la lección. So let's see here. You should be able to see my screen, yes? Perfecto. So let's see here. Sky, how about you be the receptionist here on the left side, a la izquierda, and then Leia, you're the guest on the right side. We're just going to practice a hotel check-in here. Now, pay attention here. When you introduce yourself, Leia, you want to change this out with your personal information, of course.
All right. Bienvenida al hotel. ¿En qué le puedo servir?
Hola, necesito hacer el check-in.
Muy bien. ¿Ya tiene reservación?
Sí, me llamo Lea Levis.
¿Cómo se deletrea su apellido?
L-E-V-I-S.
Perfecto. Aquí está. Su reservación es por 3 noches.
Así es.
¿Tiene una identificación y una tarjeta de crédito?
Claro, aquí tiene.
Muy bien, señora. Didn't hear your last name.
Lewis.
Lewis. Oh, it's right there on your screen. Muy bien, señora Lewis. Aquí tiene la llave. Disfrute su estancia.
Muchas gracias. Muy amable.
Okay.
What does ACS mean?
ACS, yeah, I was just going to ask if there's any questions. So ACS it's just a confirmation. So the receptionist here is saying, perfecto, aquí está su reservaciones por 3 noches. So she just asked you how to spell your name. She looked you up in the system and she found your reservation for 3 nights and you're just confirming. Yep, that's it. Basically, ACS is like, and yeah, it's like that. Hola, buenos días, Carly.
Hola, bien.
Leia, just out of curiosity, it sounds like you're pronouncing your last name with a V, like Levis?
So when in France and in Italy, they can't say Louis. The W, they just can't pronounce it. So they almost always call me Levis.
Oh, okay.
Levis. It's like not saying Leah and saying Leia.
Sure,
they
sure.
say Leia Levis.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know. So how do you normally pronounce it in English? Louis?
Louis. Yeah.
Louis, okay, yeah, gotcha. Cool. Yeah, no, just a curiosity.
Yeah.
So in Spanish, the W of course isn't very commonly used. I wouldn't say levies because they will think that it's a V as in Victor.
Oh, okay.
So I would just say Louis as you would normally pronounce it, and then just be prepared to spell it for sure. Okay, muy bien. So let's switch roles. How about Leia? You're the receptionist this time, and then Carly, you can be the guest. By the way, any other questions? So we asked about ACS. Any other questions about this dialogue so far?
Is disfrute su estancia, is that enjoy your stay?
Exactly, muy bien. So disfrutar is a regular AR verb. Here we're seeing it in the command form, and so that's why the E is there. So the command form is like when you're telling somebody to do something. It sounds much harsher than it is, right? we use it all the time. It's when you learn it like, oh, it's a command, like bossing me around. But it's like in this situation, enjoy your stay. So she's telling you to have a good time, right? So okay, go ahead, Leia.
Bienvenida al hotel. Okay, puedo servir?
Is it me this time or is it Sky?
Yeah, Carly, you're the
Me?
guest.
Okay. Hola, necesito hacer el check-in.
Muy bien. ¿Ya tiene reservación?
Sí, me llamo Carly Ortiz.
¿Cómo se deletra su apellido?
Se deletrea O-R-T.
Y
I-Z.
Perfecto. Aquí está. ¿Su reservación es por 3 noches?
Así es.
¿Tiene una identificación y una tarjeta de crédito?
Claro, aquí tiene.
Muy bien, señora Ortiz. Aquí tiene la llave. Disfrute su estancia.
la llave, double L is more like a, and in Spain, it's going to be more like a J, llave. Aquí tiene la llave.
Muchas gracias. Muy amable.
Okay, muy bien. Ahora, let's go. Carly, you're the receptionist. Go to Sky.
Bienvenida al hotel. ¿En qué le puedo servir?
Hola, necesito hacer el check-in.
Muy bien. ¿Ya tiene reservación?
Sí, me llamo Sky Minery.
¿Cómo se deletrea su apellido?
Apellido.
Apellido.
Se deletrea M-I-G-N-E-R-Y.
Perfecto. Aquí está. ¿Su reservación es por 3 noches?
Sky.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear anymore. A CS.
¿Tiene una identificación y una tarjeta de crédito?
Claro, aquí tiene.
Muy bien, señora. And then remind me how to say her last name.
Minery.
Minery. Aquí tiene la llave. Disfrute su estancia.
Muchas gracias. Muy amable.
Okay, nice job, everybody. Muy bien. So this next little section that we're going to go over is from the other book that I've had you buy, which is the 5 Easy Steps to Speak Spanish with Confidence book. So this is just more like study advice, kind of help you figure out what to do outside of class. And I'm just talking about the first step, which is kind of just the foundation of having you set up your Spanish studies to really motivate yourself, make it your #1 priority, and kind of cater your Spanish experience to your own personal goals with learning the language. So the first easy step is to start by writing about your objectives and your inspiration. So going outside of actually the Spanish studies per se, but getting a notebook and writing down your objectives and your inspirations. And I'm telling you this just because I did everything when I was trying to learn how to speak Spanish. I studied in high school, in college, I did immersion trips, I did software trips, and it was really hard for me. And the only reason why I speak Spanish today and that I'm able to teach Spanish is because I would not give up. So I actually came to a point in my Spanish career when I was living in Spain. This was after studying Spanish for a couple of years in high school, not getting anywhere. I decided to get on a plane and go to Spain, and I was doing the full immersion thing, and I was just miserable. I was having so much, it was so hard for me. It was really, really hard for me. So I was ready to give up. And right when I was about to give up, I called my mom. I was in Barcelona. She was here in the United States. I was 18 at the time. And, she's like, if you're really that miserable, because I'd been there for a couple of weeks And I was in these Spanish immersion classes where my teacher did not speak any English and I did not speak any Spanish. And it was 4 hours a day of blah, 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 blah. And then on top of it, I was living with the Spanish host family. So I wasn't at a hotel or in student dorms or anything like that. I was with a family from Spain. Again, they didn't speak any English. So I went a couple of weeks with just not being able to communicate with anybody and just feeling so incredibly uncomfortable. So before I decided, when my mom offered to buy me a plane ticket to come home, I said, okay, well, let me think about it. In Spanish, we call this consultar la almohada. Consultar la almohada, which means to consult the pillow, to sleep on it. It's always been one of my favorite Spanish sayings. Anyways, before I went to bed that night, I sat down and I realized I was at a crossroads. This was my make it or break it moment, right? So I wrote down a list of why I wanted to learn how to speak Spanish. And when I realized exactly why I was doing it, I decided that I wasn't going to give up. So I always like to share this list with my students, right? So from there, I kind of established the foundation of this program that I'm teaching you today. I kind of realized being in these classes, these intensive Spanish classes where my teacher was talking to me for 4 hours a day and I couldn't understand her, she was really hung up, assumably, on the grammar and stuff. I remember seeing all these verb charts up on the whiteboard and, well, chalkboard back then, and sentence structure and, reviewing the sentences, and I'm like, gosh, this just isn't helping me, So I started thinking about my daily situations, like the things that I was doing on a daily basis. And, inevitably, what do? You go out, you have to buy a bottle of water at some point, right? Or a pack of gum or whatever it is, you need to buy from the store. So I was shopping. I had breakfast and dinner prepared for me at the homestay house, but I was free for my own to do whatever I wanted to do for lunch. So I had to order food on a daily basis. And then, of course, I have a social side of me, right? I need to meet new people. I need to introduce myself to new people, right? So I started actually just writing down my own little dialogues, this is what I need to learn how to say. And so the result of that was about another week after that, after kind of creating my own little program here, understanding why I was learning Spanish, and then just using a dictionary to look up my own little custom vocabulary lists and dialogues. I found myself about a week later in this area called Las Ramblas. Has anybody been to Spain by chance here? Carly and Leah? Have you ever been to Barcelona?
Mm-hmm.
So this area, Las Ramblas, I'm sure. Las Ramblas it's like the big kind of walking mall type area. It's kind of like the 16th Street Mall or Pearl Street Mall, right? Lots of bars and restaurants and cultural activities and stuff to do. So I was walking down, I was out kind of bar hopping in Las Ramblas one night. And it was time, I spent the whole evening just going up to people and introducing myself, right? Hola, me llamo David, quiero practicar español, or something along those lines, right? And, it was kind of fun. I had a little liquid courage in me. So that was, of course, helping things, right? But the result of it was at the end of the night, I got in a taxi. And it was about a 15-minute taxi ride back to my apartment, or my flat, as they call it in Europe. And I talked to the taxi driver the entire way home in Spanish, but I didn't even realize I was doing it, because once you hit that moment with your Spanish studies, when you first have a conversation, you don't necessarily realize you're doing it in the moment. And so I went upstairs and I laid down, I started falling asleep, and then I shot up out of bed like a rocket, because I realized I was just talking to that guy for 15 minutes, not to say it was perfect grammar or whatever, but after having been fairly miserable for about 3 weeks, I finally got it. I was able to introduce myself. We talked about Spain and music and why I was there, right? So, it's possible, right? And I just, this first step is all about trying to set you up for success so you don't give up, right? So something I always have my students do is get a notebook that you dedicate towards Spanish, right? And then I would divide it in perfectly, exactly, right? And then I would divide it up into 5 different sections. Divide it up however you want to, but I think these 5 sections are really good. One is dedicated to the reasons and objectives, like I just shared with you, and we're going to cover that in a little bit more detail here in a second. The next section is dedicated to dialogues that you're having with people. The next section is dedicated to vocabulary. Another section is dedicated to conversation starters or icebreakers. And the final section is dedicated to personal reflection. So we'll talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. So I think this is really important. Nobody does this, right? Everybody, you know, when it comes to learning how to speak a new language, you think, wow, you know, it'd be nice to learn how to speak Spanish. Maybe you've thought about why you're doing it, right? Maybe you find yourself in situations where you've done it, but has anybody here actually sat down and dedicated a piece of paper to all the reasons why you're learning how to speak Spanish?
I did after I bought your book.
Okay, good, good. All right, so nobody does this, but I find it to just be a critical aspect of the language learning process because it is a time-consuming thing. I think over the years after learning, you know, me personally having studied different languages and a lot about this language acquisition process, like the more conversational aspect, like I like to teach, I don't think it's all that hard to do. However, it is time-consuming, right? You do need to fully dedicate yourself to it for at least 3 months to be able to really get to the point where you're speaking Spanish with confidence with people. So if you're going to think about it like that, other people, you know, in my case, I studied Spanish intensively for 7 years. Of course, I'm a teacher. I don't think everybody needs to go out and start teaching Spanish. But if we're just going to think about anything really important, like everybody makes New Year's resolutions to go to the gym, right? I equate this with getting in shape, learning a new musical instrument, something like that, something that's fairly complex, that takes a lot of time to learn how to do. You better understand your reasons for doing it very well. So if you've already done this, great. If you haven't done it yet, I want you to go ahead and write these reasons down and then share it with everybody else. So these were my reasons. We're talking way back in 2001 when I was learning how to speak Spanish. And then I recognized that I kind of had 2 primary categories. I had kind of personal reasons for learning Spanish, and then I had professional reasons. And I think almost everybody I work with has a combination of these. At the time, so I was 18. I just graduated high school, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. I was working in construction. I had just moved out of my parents' home, living with some roommates in an apartment building, and almost all of my neighbors were from Mexico at the time. So I wanted to be able to communicate with my neighbors, right? And go a little bit further than that little awkward when I was walking through the hallways. I've always liked the dark-haired ladies, so I was like, ooh, if I learn some Spanish, I'll be able to impress the ladies that way. And then at the time, I had a dream. My dream was to buy a motorcycle and just drive south, go all the way down to Argentina, right? And go all over the place. So I had kind of this adventure side of me too, right? But again, we'll go back to the professional side now. So I was working construction, and who builds things here in Colorado? Spanish speakers. Sky, I know you work in architecture, right? So do you ever go out to job sites or?
Yeah, and actually that's one of my reasons too, is for the same reason as it. Well, and I've heard too that like a lot of the guys reading my plans don't even speak English, and I spend all this time putting all these English notes on it and they can't understand it. So it'd be great to.
Nice. So yeah, you know, it was really important to me for me to be able to speak Spanish at work. And it was just amazing. It was like in just that little short amount of time and the very little progress that I'd made with Spanish, they already put me in an elevated position on the job site, because we had a situation where the general contractor and his crew all spoke English and nothing but English. But every crew that came in, the painters, the landscapers, the drywallers, the roofers, they were all Spanish speakers, you know? So I was the only one on the job site that could speak a little bit of Spanish and English. And so right off the bat, it kind of put me in an elevated position. So that was cool. I did not want to work construction for the rest of my life. So I figured speaking Spanish would enhance my resume. And then I just, you know, this is right at the time where globalization was getting a big spin. And I figured it'd be very helpful to be flexible with where I lived and worked. So if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and spend a few minutes to try and write down your personal reasons and your professional reasons and anything else you can think of. And then we'll share it with the rest of the class. Okay. And let me know when you're ready.
I've already done mine.
Was that Leah?
Yeah, I've already done mine.
Okay, perfect. So go ahead, Carly and Sky, just take a couple of minutes. Don't, you know, do it really quick, and you can, you know, maybe write down your top 2 or 3 reasons, and then you can finish this later on today.
All right, I'm ready to.
All right. Carly, you too? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, why don't you go ahead and start us off, Leah?
Well, mine is actually quite simple, but incredibly powerful. And I think we talked about this before. It looks like my son is going to marry a young lady from Madrid, and her family does not speak English. And I'm going to be there over the holidays, and I want to at least be able to try something so that they don't, my son doesn't have to constantly translate for me.
Wow, so that's already coming up this holiday season, Leah?
Yeah, I'm going to see them in between Christmas and New Year's. We're going to Madrid.
Nice. Well, we still have, you're really putting my theory to work here. Somebody to speak Spanish in 3 months.
Super intense. So yeah, and both my younger son has 10 years of Spanish, so he actually speaks the best of the 3 of us. And then my older son clearly is living with Teresa, and he's learning really fast. So
Nice. Well, I'm going to really look forward to talking to you in the new year to see if you have either proved me right or proved me wrong. That I can teach somebody how to speak Spanish in 3 months. Nice. No, that's a fantastic reason, and really powerful. And that may, you know, later I'd like you to kind of continue thinking about other things, like, could you use it at work? Could you use it here in the community? Do you have any other travel plans or anything like that? But certainly, you know, your son is getting married and establishing a new family. And, you know, it may now be the implications of speaking with her parents, with the new in-laws, right? But the extended family. What about when the grandkids come? Are they going to be living in Spain, or?
They're actually living in Switzerland.
Okay.
But I suspect that, so my sons are both Italian. I think you guys know that. And I grew up in Geneva. That's where the French comes from. And then married an Italian, but he passed away a few years ago. So I suspect my grandchildren will, because their mother's mother tongue is Spanish, their mother tongue will probably be Spanish. But they will also speak English, and they'll be living probably in a French-speaking part of Switzerland, but they will also learn Italian. So it's a multicultural, multilingual, and I got to be a part of it. I have to be a part of it.
Sure. Nice. Awesome. How about you, Sky?
Yeah, so we already talked about it a little bit, but it's just like what I said before, that I'd love to be able to communicate with, like you said, almost everyone on a job site is Spanish speaking. And then it was a huge surprise to me to hear that I was talking to one of my coworkers, the construction manager, And we were talking about something that was on the plans, and I said, well, it's all on the plans. And he's like, well, none of the crews speak English, so they can't read your plans. And that was like, I don't know why that never occurred to me before, but that was blew my mind. And I'm like, well, how great would it be if I could do plan sets in Spanish? So that'd be great for my work. And then my other motivation is that I would love to travel and maybe even live part-time in Mexico or some other Spanish-speaking country. So I'd love to be able to communicate.
Nice. Perfect. How about you, Carly?
So my husband is actually Colombian. He's lived in the States since he was a kid now, but his family still lives in Colombia, and his mom is mostly Spanish speaking. She can speak in English, but kind of the same Christmas thing. I'm going to try to surprise her at Christmas with some Spanish, because we've been together for a long time. So it's really important to me. And we'll be going to Colombia for an extended period of time next year. And so I want to be able, to kind of hold my own in conversation. And then also professionally, I'm a copywriter, and my company is international, and we're doing a big marketing campaign in Puerto Rico next year. And I'd like to contribute to that, and, just as a resume builder even. So.
Nice. Wow. So I've got two people testing my 3-month theory here on the call. Wow. Okay, good. No, you can do it. You can do it. I mean, you've seen, we've only been together for what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks now. And we've made a lot of progress. So just keep going and, keep adding to this list of reasons. And at any point in time, if you feel like you need some motivation or some inspiration, or because it's kind of a roller coaster of learning a language. It's got a lot of ups and downs in it, and, there will be a time where you're like, it's 6:30. Do I really have to get up and go to Spanish? So just keep that list handy, and anytime you feel like you need it, review it, and it'll help to motivate you. All right, the next section of your notebook is going to be dedicated to dialogue. So Carly works in marketing and copywriting. Leah works in high tech, right? Cisco high tech, and is traveling to Spain to meet the in-laws. And then Sky works in, architecture and construction. So you three have 3 completely different paths for your daily routines, what you do on a daily basis, the reasons why you're learning Spanish, a little similarities with the family stuff, right? A little Sky, you had some similarities with me with like job site, workplace Spanish, right? But at the end of the day, 3 different paths. So what another section, and I think this is the most powerful section, is going to be dedicated to real life dialogues that you're actually having on a daily basis. The trick here is it has to be real and relevant and practical to your daily interactions with people. Because I can only teach you kind of a generalized Spanish, right? It's going to be up to you to kind of learn what you need to know. And the faster you can learn these, like I shared my example when I was in Spain, right? What did I need to learn how to do? I needed to learn how to buy stuff and order food, especially the ordering food at restaurants. I can't tell you. I'm very particular about seafood. I love seafood if I know like the history of it. And so I'm very cautious of it. But in Spain, they eat a lot of seafood, and I can't tell, like when I got there, like I was just pointing at stuff on the menu. I had no idea what I was ordering, right? And I would get every now and then a seafood dish like that I could not eat, like I couldn't do it, right? So that was super important to me to let, after doing that for a couple of days and getting meals that I couldn't eat, I quickly learned what a sandwich was. Sandwich, that was a hard one. And then I learned how to say ham and cheese, right? Sandwich de jamón y queso. And so then I lived for about 2 weeks on ham and cheese sandwiches. And then I finally started realizing like, oh, my teacher's never going to teach this stuff to me. I have to learn how to have these, conversations with people on my own. So that was probably the most helpful thing that I did. but you start like writing down a dialogue, right? So imagine first round, write it in English, just like you would have it in English, right? So here's just like a little fake dialogue I made up, right? So imagine I'm having a conversation with my wife, right? So this is what it looks like in English. And then after I've written it out, the trick here too is also to make it simple. Try to simplify the conversation, right? Don't try to make it super complex. Have, 3 to 5 exchanges back and forth, questions and answers. Because if you could go on and write a whole book about this stuff, and then you'll be completely lost. So try and keep it simple. For the time being, also be aware of what we're learning in class. So far, we're just in the simple present tense. So if you're having questions about like, what did you do last night, or what are you going to do this weekend, or whatever, like just be aware that you're changing, past, present, and future. And so far, we've only touched the present tense, right? So keep it at your level as well. And then translate it, right? Translate it over to Spanish, or bring it to class, and we can start to kind of go, give everybody a chance to kind of ask some questions at the beginning of class every time to personalize your conversations here, because sometimes the way you would translate it isn't actually how they would say it in Spanish. But at least this will give you kind of a base for what you're doing. And then you can also start identifying certain categories of vocabulary that you're using on a day-to-day basis to build your own vocabulary list, which brings us to the next point, which is all about learning vocabulary. By the way, I want to go back to the dialogue point. You can try to think of it on your own, right? But with the invention of this, it's all right here. Everything that you need to learn how to say is already right here. Look at your text messages, look at your emails, and look at your social media posts. And, if you go back, just from the last week, look at the last, a great place to start would be to look at your last, make sure it's an exchange, right? It's got to be a back and forth with somebody, but look at your last 3 text message exchanges. Look at your last 3 email exchanges and your last 3 Facebook exchanges, and you'll get a really good idea of the vocabulary that you're actually using. Because sometimes we think like, oh, I talk about this all the time, and then we look at what we're actually talking about it, and it's a little bit different. So
when a quick question, just when you say hola amor, can you say that to your child, or is it only to your, like your lover, your husband or wife?
yeah, it's just it's a term of endearment.
So I could say hola amor to Teresa, or to my son. Okay.
Yep. Muy bien. All right, so that brings us to our next step, which is the 3rd category, I believe, which is about vocabulary. So if you've done the dialogues, you should be able to start identifying vocabulary categories. So I say categories just because when I study vocabulary, I think it's helpful to study it by a category to keep you it just makes it a little bit easier, right? The idea with the dialogues, if you're taking them from your text messages and your email exchanges with people, is it's real conversations that you're having with people, which makes it extremely relevant. So to put this into perspective, absolutely nobody in this class is a doctor, right? So if I started going into really detailed information about, medical vocabulary, everybody would get bored, right? It's boring. It's not useful. You're not going to go out and start talking to doctors all of a sudden just for kicks because you're learning medical Spanish in class, right? So you want to make sure that the vocabulary that you're learning is relevant. Again, this word is so important, relevance. I came across a number a few years ago, this guy that was given a presentation in China about teaching languages. In his research, he was a PhD focused on linguistics. In his research had found that most people use the same 1,000 words for about 80% of their daily interactions. However, my 1,000 words, when I say the same 1,000 words, it means your 1,000 words are the same words that you're using on a daily basis. They're not necessarily the same 1,000 words that I'm using, right? So I'm a teacher. I'm always talking to people about doing homework and studying and memorizing and preparing for tests, right? But you probably aren't having those conversations with people that often. Maybe now that you're studying a language with me, right? But typically speaking, you probably wouldn't talk about that all that often. So you have to make it relevant to your daily life, and the dialogues will help you identify what's relevant. And so this is a totally achievable milestone. If you think about it, 1,000 words, 1,000 new words is your goal. You want to learn 1,000 new words in Spanish, and you'll be able to speak Spanish. And if we break it down, that's just 10 new words a day for about 3 months, for 100 days. 10 new words a day for 100 days, and you should be speaking Spanish if it's the right 10 new words a day, right? If you're learning 10 new words a day that you don't ever use, like, I don't know, who here, well, I can't think of a bad example of something, right? But if you're learning stuff that you don't talk about, it's just not going to help you, is the point here. So break it up into categories just to make it easy. And these are just some suggested categories for you that I think at the end of the day, everybody needs to learn. But we've got food, right? The food category is so important because you're about to get on a plane and go to Spain, it sounds like, Leah, in just a month. Carly, you're going to Colombia in a month or for the holidays?
Next year, yeah.
Next year. So, I mean, you want to be able to order food, trust me. This category I like a lot, vocabulary for the home, because then you can start like using little sticky notes like this and just start labeling stuff around your house, because then it makes it more of an immersive experience for you, even being at home. So write down la pared, which means the wall, and stick it on the wall. Write down el gabinete and stick it on the cabinets. Write down el escritorio and stick it on your desk. La computadora on the computer, right? And it just, it gets your mind focused on Spanish. It keeps it constant in your life, right? There's also something that's called culture shock. And culture shock is just like a psychological problem. It's a real thing. I've studied it intensively. It's got 4 different stages, but subconsciously, if you're in a new country and in a new environment, especially where a new language is being spoken, at the subconscious level, if you don't know how to say everything that's in your surroundings, you're going to be slightly anxious, slightly perturbed, right? And so the more you can learn how to just say everything, like look around the room right now and learn how to say everything that you can see in the room. And that will help you with your confidence and your well-being. We can apply that same thing to office and work, because most people spend most of their time at work. And then things that you like, of course, and we'll see this in the next slide about our conversation starters, your daily activities, your hobbies, the things that you like. These are the things that you're going to talk to new people about, right? So make sure you know how to talk about your, the things that you like to do, because that's how we make conversation with new people and make friends with new people. So moving on along, any questions about the vocabulary list? These are my suggested categories again. Customize it to however you, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to learn. Because I'm going to keep, going with this program where we're of course going to keep learning a lot of new vocabulary, but I want you to also start kind of, spending a few minutes a day trying to think of things that you want to learn how to say that would help you start speaking Spanish like right now, because it's just, we got to get to those 1,000 words. Any questions about this? This is one of the most important things, I think. So think about that and start getting that list of 1,000 words together. Okay. Last thing, just because I just said 1,000 words, right? I don't want you to go out and just write down 1,000 words and get like a big, huge stack of flashcards. I'm very intentional about these categories for a reason. Get a stack of like 10 to 20 words at a time. Get a category and work on 10 words at a time. Because I one time had a student that brought me like this many flash. She was so frustrated. She's like, I can't learn this language. And I was like, well, show me what you're doing. And she got out this huge stack of flashcards and she starts going through. I'm like, no. That's why you're not getting it. So I want to be very outspoken about that. Okay, conversation starters. This is a great section because what are you going to do the next time you hear somebody speak in Spanish? If you're like a lot of my students, you're going to freeze up, right? You're going to say, hey, here's my chance. And then now what do I say? You'll get nervous, right? Has anybody ever felt that yet? Like, I know we've only been together for a couple of weeks, but you're in class, you leave class, you're like, now's my chance to speak a little Spanish. I'm at the restaurant, here comes the server, and right? So if it hasn't happened yet, it will. And this is another good section of your book that will prepare you for this. So what do you do when you hear Spanish? You have to make that conversation. You have to make that first move.
That's in this book?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all from the first step of that book.
Okay.
So my absolute favorite conversation starter of all time, and I say that because I use this on a daily basis. This is like my third immersion trip now. When I moved to Argentina, when I was going to be there for a full year this time, I was starting from scratch. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anybody to practice Spanish with. And I knew that if I didn't practice Spanish, I wasn't going to learn it, right? So I learned how to say this really on my first day, and I started introducing myself everywhere I went. Hola, me llamo David. Estoy aprendiendo español. Podemos practicar español. And I believe I've taught you this on lesson number 2 or something very similar to this as part of your introduction dialogue. And it's just so powerful because you're introducing yourself first. So naturally, if you think you're nervous when it comes to meeting somebody new, guess what? They're also nervous, right? And so by introducing yourself, by saying, hola, me llamo Carly, or hola, me llamo Leah, you're breaking the ice and reducing that initial tension. And now you're offering something about yourself. Estoy aprendiendo español. I'm learning Spanish. And that's going to make people kind of excited to talk to you. And then the last one is, podemos practicar español. Can we practice Spanish? Most people like to help other people. It's just part of human nature. So if you introduce yourself to this like this in the right circumstance, more than likely somebody's going to say yes, and they're going to try to help you. Okay, be right back. Give me a second. All right, these next 3 also work in just about any situation. ¿Qué te gusta hacer para divertirte? What do you like to do to have fun? The next one is, ¿cuáles son tus intereses? What are your interests? And the last one is, ¿qué te hace feliz? What makes you happy? At the end of the day, you can add to this, right? If you're going up to people on the job site, Sky, you might want to have some conversation starters prepared about construction, right? Leah, think about, the things that you want to, when you first meet your son's mother-in-law, right? Like, what are some things that you can say to her to break the ice? Carly, same thing for you, right? So add a few things there. So let's just go around the room and ask each other these questions to get a little practice in with this, Sky. So Sky, go ahead and introduce yourself to Leah and ask her these 3 questions.
All right. Hola, me llamo Sky. Estoy aprendiendo español. ¿Podemos practicar español?
Claro, me llamo Leah. A mucho gusto.
¿Qué te gusta hacer para divertirte?
Me gusta caminar en las montañas.
En la montaña. Me gusta caminar en la montaña.
Me gusta caminar en la montaña.
¿Cuáles son tus intereses? How do I say that?
Intereses.
Intereses.
Ahí está.
Mis intereses son
Bailar, to dance.
no, travel.
Viajar.
Viajar.
And so just so you know, like here would be a good way just to say me gusta, right? To answer this with me gusta. Me gusta viajar.
Me gusta viajar.
Bien.
¿Qué te hace feliz?
Ma familia.
Mi familia, muy bien. Mi familia me hace feliz. Excelente. All right. Now, Leah to Carly.
Hola, me llamo Lea. Estoy aprendiendo español. ¿Podemos practicar?
Estoy aprendiendo. Aprendiendo.
Estoy aprendiendo español. ¿Podemos practicar español?
Hola, me llamo Carly. Sí.
¿Qué te gusta hacer para divertirte?
Me gusta practicar yoga.
Ah, c'est bien. ¿Cuáles son tus intereses?
Me gusta practicar yoga y viajar.
¿Qué te haces feliz?
¿Qué te hace feliz?
¿Qué te hace feliz?
Mi gato. Sometimes.
Bien. All right. So Carly, back to Sky.
I do have a question here.
Sí.
Aprendiendo, could I say aprendo or does it not?
You would have to take away the estoy. Hola, me llamo Carly. Aprendo español. Podemos practicar español. Claro que sí.
Because this is I am practicing.
This is literally I am learning. Yeah.
Learning. Okay.
And we're about to see this form in the next level.
Cool. Okay. Hola, me llamo Carly. Estoy aprendiendo español. ¿Podemos practicar español?
Sí. Hola, me llamo Sky.
¿Qué te gusta hacer para divertirte?
Me gusta leer.
¿Cuáles son tus intereses?
Me gusta esquiar.
¿Qué te hace feliz?
Mis amigas.
Muy bien. All right. So you see how those work? At the end of the day, you can make other conversation starters based on your own interests, things you like to do for fun, things you do for work, that sort of thing, and start creating, try and get about 10 of these that are going to be your go-to ways of starting a conversation with somebody when you hear Spanish being spoken. The last little section of your notebook can be dedicated just towards personal reflection. So thinking about kind of your little victories with Spanish, as well as the failures, right? Like if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're like, you go in and you order food at a Mexican restaurant and you get through it, right? It'll be incredibly rewarding. You write about that experience. Or you try to order food and you freeze up and you get nervous and you can't do it. You have to switch back over to English, right? Write about that. Just write your way through these things, but especially focusing on the positive. You've got the entire language in front of you. It's really important to think about your small little victories. Hey, I was able to learn those 10 new words today, right? Oh, I heard somebody speaking Spanish at the grocery store and I introduced myself and, like what a rush, like it was fun. So try to be positive, If you write about a negative experience, what can you learn from it? What can you do better, right? I froze up because I couldn't actually think of the right way to say, you know, hamburger, right? And so then, you know, you need to study those food vocabulary words that much harder. Okay, muy bien. So that was just from this book, 5 Easy Steps to Speak Spanish with Confidence. There are 4 other steps in the book for you to follow. So please take a look at that book and go through it when you get the chance. All right, was that helpful for everybody?
Mhm.
Yes.
Little different from what we've been doing over the past few weeks, but I find that it's a helpful activity to do with students. Okay, we've only got 10 minutes left of class. We're going to go ahead and jump into lesson number 9. So this is Fundamentos de Español, lección 9. Hoy en esta lección vamos a repasar cómo hacer el check-in en el hotel. Vamos a hacer más preguntas y respuestas. Vamos a concentrar en la tercera persona. New stuff. We'll talk about free time. And then we'll also learn how to talk about the first person plural, which in English we say we. We do this together. So, tiempo libre. Let's learn some new vocabulary first. Repiten. Cantar karaoke.
Cantar karaoke.
Escuchar música.
Escuchar música.
Cocinar comida.
Cocinar comida.
Trabajar en el jardín.
Trabajar en el jardín.
Sacar fotos.
Sacar fotos.
Nadar en la piscina.
Nadar en la piscina.
Acampar en las montañas.
Acampar en las montañas.
Vender cosas en línea.
Vender
Cosas en línea.
Convivir con los amigos, con amigos.
Convivir con amigos.
Asistir a partidos de fútbol.
Asistir a partidos de fútbol.
Yeah, good. So some of these are kind of phrasal type expressions, so you have to learn them as they are. Vamos a practicar, cantar, Sky.
Yo canto, tú cantas, él canta, ella canta.
Muy bien. Lea, escuchar.
Yo escucho, tú escuchas, él e ella escucha.
Muy bien. Cocinar.
Yo cocino, tú cocinas, él y ella cocina.
Muy bien. Trabajar.
Yo trabajo, tú trabajas, él trabaja, ella trabaja.
Sacar.
¿Qué significa sacar?
So it can mean a couple of things. We're learning it in the context of to take pictures, sacar fotos. It can also mean like to take out the trash or just to take out something.
Okay. Yo saco, tú sacas, él, ella saca.
And try to get in the habit, Leah, of just saying él saca, ella saca.
Él saca, ella saca.
Yeah, because technically, if you say él y ella, you're now in the third person plural. And that's a different conjugation. So part of this is we repeat it a whole lot to form these new neural pathways in our brains to make it stick. So in the event that you do say something wrong, you're like, oh, wait a second, that's not right. So yeah, it's important to say él saca or ella saca, separated. Nadar, Carly.
Yo nado, tú nadas, él nada, ella nada.
Acampar.
Yo acampo, tú acampas, él acampa, ella acampa.
Vender.
Yo vendo, tú vendes, él vendes,
Vender.
vende, ella vende.
Ahí está, muy bien. Convivir.
Yo convivo, tú convives, él convive, Ella convive.
Asistir.
Yo asisto. Tú asistes. Él asiste. Ella asiste.
Muy bien. Ok. Número 1, Lea.
David asiste a los partidos de los Rockies.
Muy bien.
Mi papá acampé en las montañas.
AR verb, so end it with a. Acampa.
Acampa.
Mi mejor amigo convive conmigo cada día.
Mi esposa cocina comida muy rica.
Ella vende ropa en Amazon.
Mi hijo nada en la piscina.
Tu mamá
Saca. Saca.
Tu mamá saca muchas fotos.
María trabaja en el jardín los fines de semana.
Tu prima escucha la música bachata.
El cantares.
Mm. So you're trying to, it sounds like you're trying to add it to the end, but remember the rule is you take away the AR ending and then we're in the third person. So you just add back an A. Canta.
El canta karaoke los viernes.
Okay, muy bien. Entonces, so now let's practice asking questions in the third person singular. So for the purpose of this activity, we're going to use the people that are in the green box here. So you could ask somebody a question about their best friend, about their husband, about their cousin, whatever, right? So the question would look like this. Tu mejor amigo canta karaoke? And you would answer, sí, él canta karaoke. Okay. So let's go Leah to Carly, number 1.
Tu esposo canta karaoke?
Sí, mi esposo canta karaoke. Sky, ¿tu primo escucha música?
Sí, mi primo escucha música. Lea, tu mejor amiga cocina comida.
Sí, y cocina comida.
Good catch.
Carly, tu hermano trabaja en el jardín?
No, mi
In
hermano.
el jardín. In el jardín.
El jardín.
No, mi hermano no trabaja en el jardín. Sky, ¿tu jefe saca fotos?
Sí, mi jefe saca fotos. Lea, tu primo nada en la piscina.
Primo is cousin.
Primo is cousin. Muy bien.
Sí, mi primo nadar
Nada. Mhm.
nada en las piscinas.
In la piscina.
In las piscinas. Oh, they were good. Carly, tu hijo acampar en las montañas?
Tu hijo acampa.
Tu hijo acampa en las montañas?
Sí, mi hijo acampa en las montañas.
¿Tienes hijos, Carly? Do you have children?
No,
Ah, bueno,
could I
entonces.
say here that I don't have a son?
So imagine if your suegra, the mother-in-law, asks you're like, oh yeah, I got kids, right? So everything we do here is real life conversation. So you also need to learn how to say, oh, I don't have children. And
Okay.
trust me, it's a common question. Like in Latin America, we live our lives by our family. The family nucleus is so important. So the first questions people are going to ask you are going to be about your kids. And so it's important to know how to say, I don't have kids. So do you know how
Would
to
it be
say I don't have
tengo here?
¿Cómo?
No tengo hijo.
Yeah, no tengo
Un
hijos.
hijo?
I would put it in the plural. No tengo
Hijos.
un hijo or no tengo hijos. Mhm.
No tengo hijos. Sky. ¿Tu hermano vende cosas en línea?
No, no tengo hermano. So no, so mi hermano vende cosas en línea.
No, mi hermano no vende cosas en línea.
No vende cosas en línea. So Leah, ¿tu hermana convive con amigos?
Convive.
Convive con amigos?
Sí, mi hermana convivas con amigos.
Convive.
Convive.
Vive.
Vive con amigos. Carly, ¿tu esposo asistir a partidos de fútbol?
Sí, mi esposa asiste a partidos de fútbol.
Cuidado, Carly. You just told us your wife goes to football games, soccer games.
Mi esposo
There you go.
asiste a partidos de fútbol. No one
Good.
tell my esposo.
Yeah, yeah. We won't